Another day, another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast coming to you from another bedroom. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday so far. It is match day. Arsenal take to the field tonight to face Monaco in the UEFA Champions League phase. I still feel weird saying that, but we do still have work to do in order to cement a place in the top 8 of the competition, which would see us progress to the next round without having to go through a playoff round first, which I think is really, really important. We moan a lot, don't we, about the volume of fixtures. We moan a lot about the number of games, the injury problems that we're having to contend with as a result of maybe the sort of overpiling of games. And so the last thing we want is an extra game that we don't really need to have. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode. Really, really appreciate it. I'm looking a bit scruffy, I know. First of all, I need a haircut. I need a beard trim. Been so bloody busy, I haven't had the chance, but I have made myself some time tomorrow. Man Cave 2.0 is underway. I've been out in the garden, cutting down trees, clearing grass, weeds, you name it, making space for the beginning of Man Cave 2.0, which is why I'm a little bit all over the place today. But I felt that given there's a lot to talk about, as there always seems to be with Arsenal, I should jump on and bring you guys an episode of the podcast. I do want to start off by talking about the Dan Ashworth stuff. We will discuss the injury crisis that we seem to be facing at the moment. We will talk about the Monaco game, which is coming up tonight, what maybe Mikel Arteta does in the absence of some of those key players who we've been discussing in recent days as potential doubts for this one. I want to start with the Dan Ashworth stuff, though, because for me, I mean, I'm not interested. I've got to be honest. Like, I'm not interested in bringing Dan Ashworth to our football club. I don't see how it's a good fit. I don't see how it works. I don't for a second think that he's as good as maybe some people would have you believe. I think the fact that he was let go by Manchester United so soon says a lot about, some of his ideas. I'm not saying that if Sir Jim Ratcliffe doesn't agree with it, then it must be terrible, because I'm not even sure that he's a completely competent leader, if I'm being honest with you. I think the Manchester United situation was supposed to get dramatically better when he got involved, when he came in. And I think there have been a lot of questionable mistakes. I think the mistake to keep Erik ten Hag on and then sack him in October, that's one that, for me is kind of unforgivable, if you like. It says so much about Manchester United's organization, and it says a lot about the fact that they are just all over the place in that sense. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the work that Dan Ashworth's done previously. Now, we know Manchester United seemed to kind of move heaven and earth, didn't they, to get him from Newcastle United, only to then U-turn on that decision and let him go so soon into his tenure. And I think there are certain people in the game, and this can be inclusive of players, of coaches, of sporting directors, of directors, whatever. There's a lot of people who are suited to certain size clubs. And I feel like Dan Ashworth fits into that category. Now, I'm not saying that he can never progress and that he can never go and join one of the more traditional big boys, but he's gone to Manchester United, and very, very quickly it's been decided that he's not the right guy. And some of the ideas that we're hearing, for example, the idea to bring in Gareth Southgate, that's not something I would ever be on board with. And if someone looks at what Gareth Southgate did with England, albeit good when you compare it to England's previous history, I just look at it and I don't think that anyone really campaigning for Gareth Southgate to be the Manchester United boss, a club where he's going to come under so much scrutiny, just like the England job, where he's going to be tasked with getting the best out of some really talented and expensive players, something that you could argue he failed to do with England. I just don't get it. I don't get why, people would look at Dan Ashworth and think, oh, well, he's great, and then still sort of believe that after he proposes that Gareth Southgate comes in and takes over your football club. Gareth Southgate was a statesman, a leader, if you like, and he was good for the England job in a lot of ways. But to manage a club like Manchester United, I think is very, very different. And I just don't think that would have ever been the right solution. And I think it was such a bad idea that I'm willing to say that I don't want Dan Ashworth at Arsenal because of that. Like, I think it was that bad an idea. I think it was that bad a sort of a thought, if you like. And I just think that Manchester United have obviously realized that maybe they made a mistake. Look, it might be that they were just singing off of different hymn sheets, singing off of different pages. And as a result of that, they're unable to I just think that maybe you know, it's I just think that maybe that's a bit of an indicator of where Dan Ashworth is in terms of his levels. Apologies for the interruption there. I had to tell my daughter that I'm live on a podcast because she wanted me to sort out her bloody tablet. I'll deal with it in a minute. We're busy now. We're talking. But yeah, not for me. Dan Ashworth isn't the solution for Arsenal. He's not someone that I'm particularly keen on seeing come to the club. If it was to happen, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, it's going to be a complete car crash and disaster. But I guess what's fair to say is that from the point I'm at now, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. It's not something that I believe would be right for Arsenal. It's not something that I believe would be right for Dan Ashworth. I think he would maybe see it as being right because the pay would be big and the status would be huge at a club like Arsenal. Of course, I get all of that. But from my perspective, not keen on it. Not keen on it at all. Okay, let's move on from the Dan Ashworth stuff. I can see a lot of you having your say on it. Good morning to Rumble. Good morning to Junior Gunner, who says, Harry, going to be at the Emirates today. Will you be? I will be. Covering the game for BBC London tonight. He says, if a family member has bought a club level ticket through a third party, do you still need to bring ID? Thanks in advance. Mate, I don't know, is the honest answer. It's been such a long time since I bought any sort of ticket because obviously I'm a season ticket holder. That I'm just really not sure of the protocols right now. And the last thing I want to do is give you the wrong information. In terms of the Dan Ashworth stuff, lots of people not having it. Paul James says, morning all, Dan Ashworth, no thanks. He thought Gareth Southgate would make a good club manager, so his judgment is at best questionable. I agree with that. There's lots of talk about maybe what Dan Ashworth done in previous roles and that data was at the center of a lot of his recruitment and a lot of it worked really, really well. And it did. But I think when you're talking about the very biggest football clubs, it needs to be more than just data. Data is important. Yeah. Data can tell us a lot. Yes. But I think it's got to be more than that. It's got to be about the personality of the players. It's got to be about so many different things, so many different factors. And I'm just not entirely sure that Dan Ashworth is going to be able to give us what we need as a football club, because our needs are very different to those of Brighton. Our needs are very different to those of Newcastle. You know, our needs are completely different. It's a totally different ball game. It's a different job altogether. So I think he's done some impressive work at some of the clubs he's been at previously, but based on the fact that it didn't work out at Manchester United, I'm apprehensive at best, is what I would say. Okay, let's talk about some of the injury problems that we've got. I am going to keep this episode very, very brief, just because I'm mad busy today. Got to prepare for the game tonight as well. We'll be covering the game from the Emirates Stadium, and you will get a match day reaction pod, of course, later on from inside Emirates Stadium, where we'll reflect on whatever unfolds in the clash with Monaco tonight. But obviously, we were rocked going into this game by some more potentially bad news when it comes to injuries. Thomas Partey wasn't training. Jurrien Timber wasn't training. And obviously, there's still no Riccardo Calafiori, no Gabriel either. So Arsenal have been hit with a real defensive injury crisis at the moment. And I think the irony of all of this is that over the last few days, we've been talking a lot about whether or not we did enough in terms of recruitment, in terms of the squad. Did we do enough to put us in a position where we could achieve our objectives for this season? And, you know, a lot of people are focused on the attack, of course, but it's ironic that the area in which we probably spent the most money since Mikel Arteta took charge is the area that we're being hit by. It just goes to show and proves the point that when your luck is down when it comes to injuries, your luck is down. And I think my one criticism of the club would be that we've persisted with some really clearly injury-prone players. Tomiyasu is one of them. I wouldn't put Ben White in the category of that. I would probably put Jurrien Timber in the category of that, just based on his time at Arsenal so far. Calafiori certainly fits that description. Zinchenko certainly fits that description based on his career to date. So, yeah, it's funny that, you know, we spoke loads about positions where we could have done more and should have done more in the transfer market, maybe. And the one where we did the most work, the heaviest lifting at the back, is where we're now hit and in a real spot of bother. Because Partey and Timber didn't train, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be available tonight. Let's just be clear on that. It could be that Mikel Arteta has decided that they need to sit training out, or they need to do some indoor training, or that their particular routine needs to be altered just ever so slightly in order to try and cope with that, and in order to try and deal with the workload that they're going to be facing over the next few weeks. And obviously they're so important to the team now. They're of paramount importance, both of them, because of the fact that we have the injury problems that we do. Partey can fill in at right back. Obviously, Timber is able to play anywhere across the back four, which is really handy at this moment. And I think maybe it's that. Maybe that Mikel Arteta's looked at them and gone, I'm not going to take any risks with you. I'm not going to gamble on your fitness. I'm going to leave you out of training altogether, with a view to you being available for us on Wednesday night against Monaco. And if they don't play, we've got problems. The midfield issue is not as big. Obviously, Jorginho could play, Marino could play. There are options in that area of the park. But when it comes to the defensive problems, you know, without Timber, we're in big trouble. And without Partey, who could play at right back as well, we're in a really, really sticky situation. So I think defensively, we're right to be concerned. And I hope that when I turn up to the Emirates tonight and we get the team news, I'll see that those guys are available and ready to go out and play for us and give it their all, because Monaco are a handy team. They are. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know a load about them, but they've got some exciting talents. They've got players that are capable of creating those sparks, those moments. It is the UEFA Champions League. You should never take anyone or anything for granted. And as I said at the top of the pod, we still got a lot of work to do in terms of consolidating our position where we want to be, which is in the top 8 and progressing through without having to go through the playoff round. So, yeah, bit of a concern, bit of a worry for sure. But let's wait and see what the team news looks like a little bit later on today. In terms of the preview, it's one of those games where, you know, for me, yes, people will be looking for a performance because we put in such a turgid one at times against Fulham. We did 75% of the things right, as I already said, but we were missing that cutting edge. We were missing that, you know, that sort of killer instinct when we needed it. We were missing that bit of quality in the final third when we were seeking to try and, you know, and find the goals that we needed essentially to go on and win the game. So there'll be a lot of people going there demanding a performance. But I just think when you're playing so many games so close to each other, it's not always going to work like that. You know, there are going to be times where you're just going to have to get through and get the results. And I think we've done that a fair bit in the Champions League this season. We got a really good result and performance against Sporting. We were really good in the first half against PSG, but then dropped off in the second half because I think naturally we kind of understood that, you know, we were in a place where we were going through a difficult schedule. A lot of players were out injured and we just needed to keep going, keep it moving, if you like. So in terms of the game tonight, yes, I'd love to see a performance, but the result is of paramount importance first and foremost. And then we need to go and beat Everton at the weekend. It's as simple as that, really, for Arsenal. We've fallen off the pace. We've fallen behind. We clawed some ground back last week. That ground that we clawed back is in danger of being taken back away from us by Liverpool if they win their game in hand. And so we just need to keep winning. We just need to keep moving forward. I know that sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but that's the bottom line of it. There's clarity, at least, right? There's clarity around what's required. There's clarity around what's needed. Okay, I am going to leave it there. I said it was going to be a brief episode. It is a very, very brief episode. Need to get back to clearing the jungle garden in order to allow Man Cave 2.0 to progress. So I'm going to get back to that, but I will speak to you a little bit later on after the game over on the Patreon side of things, and we'll be back with a full pod in the morning. So stay tuned for that. I look forward to bringing that to you. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great Wednesday afternoon and up the Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Let's go out there and do what's required. See you all on the next one.